Thank you very much, Mr. Lee, and let me add my congratulations to the Honourable Member for securing this important debate. I'm very grateful to the other Honourable Members who have made a very strong case for the radical reform of the UK's extradition treaties by citing very powerful case studies of many people, Deborah Dark, Gary McKinnon and far too many others. But like many other Honourable Members this afternoon, I would like to use the opportunity of today's debate to raise the case of Babar Ahmad. As other Honourable Members have said, Babar Ahmad, a British citizen, has been detained in the UK for 7 years without charge or trial. He's fighting extradition to the USA under the Extradition Act 2003, which incredibly doesn't require the presentation of any prima facie evidence. Babar is not alone in his ordeal. The poet Tala Ahsan is another UK citizen who has also been held, related to Babar's case, without charge, without trial, under our shocking extradition arrangements, and is now entering the 6th year of imprisonment. And I pay tribute to the courage and bravery of Babar's and Tala's families in fighting for justice for their sons. And before I go on, of course, I would also like to join others in paying tribute to Babar and Tala's MP, the Right Honourable Member for Tooting, who's here today, but as a member of the Shadow Cabinet, not permitted to contribute to this backbench debate. As you know, he stands firmly by both Babar, Tala and their families and has done so much since their ordeals began. Now, as Honourable Members know, in June this year, the Joint Committee on Human Rights urged the government to change the law so that Babar Ahmad's perpetual threat of extradition is ended without further delay. Since all of the allegations against Babar Ahmad are said to have taken place in Britain, Babar's father, as we know, has started an e-petition to call upon the government to put him on trial in the UK and support British justice for British citizens. And as you've also heard, over 140,000 people supported this e-petition. So today's debate on extradition is welcome, but it's not enough. And in my view, there are 3 key reasons why we need that full debate on a votable motion in the Commons chamber. I'm very grateful to the Honourable lady, no longer in her place, who was from the Backbench Committee and did assure us that they would look again at the possibility of having a full debate in the Commons chamber. And one of the reasons that I think that is so important is because of the level of the grassroots support for the e-petition on Babar Ahmad. The petition campaign had no formal organisation, no big newspaper behind it. It was basically an outflowing of grassroots outrage, including, for example, the families going around literally door to door in South London, knocking on streets in the cold and the rain, and supermarkets, standing outside churches and mosques and making videos of each other signing it. All of that posted on YouTube. It really was an example of democracy in action. And the reason this petition gained such astounding support in such a short space of time is because this is such a shocking human rights case. People are rightly appalled at the simple but extraordinary fact that the petition highlights that a British citizen is being held without charge and without trial in a maximum security prison, and that this has gone on for over 7 years. And as someone who has long lobbied for the closure of Guantanamo Bay, and as we approach the 10th anniversary of its existence, I think the cases of Babar and Tala remind us that one of the most fearful things about Guantanamo Bay, people being held without charge, without trial, is happening right here on UK soil at the behest of the US. Now, I do appreciate that the Backbench Committee would find it very difficult to devote parliamentary time to every single petition that passes the 100,000 threshold. But as I say, this is a genuinely grassroots campaign, and I feel that if we don't have a full Commons debate, we risk alienating those 140,000 plus people who signed that e-petition following the families' efforts. The families want a debate on a votable motion in the main chamber, and as do the many, many campaign supporters who've contacted them to say that. Officially, of course, all parliamentary chambers are of equal standing, but in the eyes of the general public, there is a difference between Westminster Hall and the Commons chamber, and critically that comes down to whether there can be a vote. And quite rightly, Babar Ahmad's supporters want to see their MPs take a stand on this issue. Secondly, Babar's family have been deeply moved that in the midst of a recession, more people have shown Parliament their concern over a British citizen being detained for over 7 years without charge or trial, even than the number who showed their very real anger over over the issue of rising fuel prices and the fact they wanted to lower them. I think we send a very negative message indeed to all those people who have engaged with this e-petition process if we don't take this matter forward with a debate in the chamber. One of the strongest tools that we have to combat the threat of terrorism is to vigorously protect justice, democracy and human rights. We need to remain alive to the fact that every time we undermine the very values that we purport to be protecting with legislation like the Extradition Act, we run the risk of adding to the sense of alienation that we know that many of our young people, for example, feel. Over 140,000 people are telling Parliament that they want us to engage more fully with these issues. And the third key reason, of course, why we need a debate on the floor of the House with a vote is that we need to change the law urgently, as the detention without trial of Babar and Taha undermines our very democracy. With pleasure.
Could you just be clear about what she wants the vote to be on?
I'd be very happy to take advice from other honourable members about that, but I think there should certainly be a vote that would look at the way in which the extradition treaty is designed in this country so that it is not imbalanced in the way that it is at the moment. Personally, I would also like that to have a direct reference to Babar, but I can quite understand why others may not, because this is a general principle. I think the case of Babar Ahmad absolutely illustrates it very, very clearly. Members have heard the circumstances of Babar Ahmad's arrest in 2003 and the fact that he sustained at least 73 injuries, all later documented by both police and independent doctors. He filed a formal complaint that he had been subjected to horrific physical, sexual and religious abuse by the arresting police officers. In March 2009, the Metropolitan Police finally admitted liability in the Royal Courts of Justice in London, that they did indeed carry out the assault on Babar Ahmad back in December 2003. And with the then Metropolitan Police Commissioner, Sir Paul Stevenson, admitting that Babar had been the victim of what he called a serious, gratuitous and prolonged attack. In March 2009, as we've heard, Babar was awarded £60,000 compensation at the High Court. But he's now in the 8th year at a top security prison where he has been found not to have any case to answer here. The US has alleged that Babar was running a website that solicited funds for terrorist organisations, including Al-Qaeda and Chechen rebels. Those are very serious accusations, and of course they should come to a trial. And indeed, Babar and his family desperately want it to come to a trial, but a trial here in the UK, in order to clear his name, not in the US, partly because he's a British citizen, alleged to have committed crimes here in the UK, and partly because going to the US would separate him from his family, his friends, and legal representatives, which would seriously undermine his ability to mount a strong defence. Now, his lawyers point out that there are other comparable prosecutions going ahead in the UK. Yet the UK Crown Prosecution Service declared in July 2004 and December 2006, as did the UK Attorney General Lord Goldsmith in September 2006, that there was insufficient evidence to charge Babar Ahmad with any criminal offence under UK law, so he should be extradited to the US. In a shocking turn of events last night, Babar's lawyers received a letter from the CPS admitting for the first time that the CPS were never given the evidence that was sent to the US, save for what they call a few documents. The bulk of that evidence was shipped straight to the US by the police. So, astoundingly, whilst we had previously been led to believe that the CPS had seen all of the evidence and judged it to be insufficient for a case here in the UK, we now get a confession that the CPS hadn't even seen all of the evidence, let alone investigated it properly. So a proper decision has not been made on whether a prosecution could go ahead here in the UK. And it's my understanding, after talking to the lawyers, that the CPS knew all along that they hadn't been given all of the evidence. Yet they have let Babar Ahmad languish in a maximum security prison with the threat of extradition to the US under the false belief that the CPS had seen all of the evidence against him. And if that is the case, I think it is absolutely appalling. It raises very serious questions about why evidence that should have been given to the CPS was not, and why Babar wasn't told. Who directed and who authorised the circumvention of the CPS, apparently in deference to and at the behest of the US? The issue actually remains simple. Either there is evidence or there is not. And if there is, there should be a prosecution in the UK. The CPS must immediately get a full copy of all of the evidence which was gathered in the UK by UK authorities and must review it and their decision on whether to prosecute in the UK. And given this new revelation from the CPS, it seems appallingly that UK authorities have deferred to the US, subverting the process that should have been followed in this case, and therefore denying Babar Ahmad a trial in this country. And because of the seriousness of this, I think it is appropriate to call today for a full public inquiry into what went on in that case. On the 10th of June 2007, the European Court of Human Rights ordered the UK government to freeze Babar Ahmad's extradition until they had fully determined his final appeal. The European Court has declared that Babar's application is partially admissible and now awaits further observations from the UK government on the life sentence without parole in a supermax solitary confinement that Babar faces if he's extradited to the United States. The final decision is expected before the end of the year. It is frankly astonishing that the last government passed an act which doesn't require the presentation of any prima facie evidence by the US when they want to extradite a UK citizen. This has to be changed, and urgently, and the way to start to do it is by having that debate on the floor of the chamber with a vote as soon as possible. So to sum up, Mr. Lee, in addition to the enormous public support the case enjoys, it has cross-party backing, the support of the Joint Committee on Human Rights, the Home Affairs Select Committee, and 100 senior barristers and solicitors who wrote to the Leader of the House this week requesting that the matter be properly debated in the main chamber of the House. I think today's revelations from the CPS make the case for a full debate with a vote even more urgent, and therefore I hope very much the government that will look at this favourably. Thank you.